Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for yet another Film Fanatic Bonanza. It is Friday morning at about, or I should say, Saturday morning at 10:13. Beautiful spring day here. The weather has been really awesome. Yesterday was pretty chaotic, but I'll go into that in a minute. Today is really a beautiful day here. It's a perfect day. It's about 70 degrees already, and it's still pretty early. So super nice day. It's definitely the greatest time of year right now here in Maine. So yeah, want to thank everybody for checking out this channel and some of the new subscribers and people who comment on these videos, and it's always a great time. Always trying to mix up things. I did a show yesterday on a movie that is just completely bonkers crazy. Gore in Venice, or Giallo in Venice. It's this Italian movie that came out in 1979 that I had been seeing in the stores for almost 3 or 4 months, and for whatever reason I passed on it. And it was one of those movies I heard about a little bit, and then reading reviews about it. They were saying that this was like the pretty much one of the sleaziest, uh, down and dirty nasties, down and dirty nasty movie ever made, or one of the nastiest movies ever made. And a lot of the time, the exploitation world, it's all about the marketing. It's all about trying to hype things, because that is part of the that's the name of the game, is getting people excited by the salaciousness of a story or a movie. That goes back to all the early, especially during the actual period of the 70s and 80s, when all of those movies were coming out. Particularly all the artwork, the billboards that would be outside of theaters. The most where they would show scenes sometimes that were not even in the movie. Of violence or of gore, to the most salacious kind of thing to attract people. And sometimes that can happen where I've seen some exploitation movies that are so hyped that they're really good, but they're not quite as violent as you expect. Sometimes they're not quite as graphic. For the most part, they really are. But I've come across a lot of movies that are hyped that way as a selling point. And when you actually watch the movie, it can be a little bit on the mild side of things as far as the explicit content. But most of the time, from what I find in the exploitation world, if you're into something that is extreme, it delivers the goods. I love the exploitation world so much because of the variety of things within those genres. And it's whether it's a movie, say like Reformed Schoolgirls, which is like this kind of slapstick comedy. It's a dark movie, but it's kind of a comedy. And then you have a movie like the New York Ripper, where it's like really brutal and just like super sleazy. I love that there's a whole gamut of different things. There's so many interesting, and then you have certain exploitation movies that are just kind of surreal and just strange, and they're quiet. They have a very unique kind of quality to them. And then you have like your action movies, like The Angel of Death is one. So I love that. I love what I find too. One of the most appealing things for me around the exploitation world is the sheer variety of different movies. I watched, like, say, another example. I watched another movie the other night that I bought, and I've done a review on, called The Lamp, which is this really cheesy '80s exploitation movie, a really great horror movie, but it's like super goofy and super campy and totally ridiculous. But it's really light and funny and super entertaining. And then you have something like the New York Ripper or Gore in Venice, where it's like really serious and brutal. And then, like I said, Reformed Schoolgirls, where it's like a comedy. There's so much variety. And today I'm really excited. This is not. I wouldn't consider this movie to be an exploitation movie, but definitely an independent film that, to a degree, could almost fit in that category. Super low budget, but a really fascinating movie. But before I get into that, we had a really fun show last night with Quantum. We played at the Poor Farm in Union, and we've played there. This was I think, our fourth gig playing at the Poor Farm. I really love that place. It's a really great nano microbrewery in Union, Maine. I live in Northport, and it's about half hour or so from my house. And it's a really beautiful location. It's a the brew pub is located in Union, like I said, and then they have the location is in Union, and it's set back in the woods. It's like literally in the woods, and it's pretty isolated, beautiful. There's a stream in the back, and there's all kinds of beautiful forestry. There's like seating inside and outside. Really, really beautiful place. I had played there um, probably about 3 times, I think. Yeah, about 3 times, maybe more, but at least 3 times with a few other bands at the Poor Farm. Those were my first kind of experiences going there, and I really thought it was a super cool place. And the thing is that's cool about it is that they'll Bill, the owner, will take chances and have maybe things that are not you know quote unquote like a conventional band that you might see at a local bar or pub here, like a classic rock band or a Grateful Dead cover band. He'll still do that, or like folk based artists, but he'll take chances and do these other kinds of odd things. He did this collaboration with a good friend of mine, Tom Luther, who is an amazing composer, piano player, and he also is a really great electronic artist. And my friend Tom Luther has played there quite a few times with his group Sphere Music, which is very experimental, atmospheric electronic music. And last summer, or this actually, it's hard to believe, it's the summer before last, the him and Tom collaborated on this music festival where they were doing like 2 days, and they'd have like some electronic music, some really kind of improvised based music, just a cool variety, and they had it for like 2 days. And I think, yeah, and I believe we had gotten asked to play at this festival, and I think that was our first gig at the Poor Farm, and it was super fun. It was a really great time. It was our first gig after COVID. We hadn't played. It was our first gig back in a very long time, in like a couple, like 2 years, and that was a great time. And then we played there last summer with Tom. Also, we played outside with Sphere Music, his band, and that was really great. That was a bonkers show because there were so many people there, and it was wild. It was also a crazy time too because at that time I was working a part-time job, and I literally got a text from my boss that it was through a text too, signed at the Times, that I got fired at the gig. We were about 5 minutes from showtime, and I got a text from my boss saying, "Oh, don't bother coming in. You're blah blah blah. Let's have a meeting and meet him in his office." And I knew what that meant, and I got fired right there. And I always will remember that. And it was really funny and kind of surreal. And then we played, but the show itself was super fun. And then we played another show over the winter time. We played inside also with Tom, and that was great. That was a lot of fun. And then we just played last night. The thing about playing at the Poor Farm is we've most of the times, the majority of the times we've played inside because the weather has been not so great. And inside, it's kind of a noisy room, and the tanks and the actual brewing happens inside the brew pub, and it's kind of a echo chamber in there. And we ended up having to play inside a few times because of the sound, because of the weather. And I actually had played in there with another band now that I think of it, because of the same circumstances. And the sound is okay. It's not great, but it's a challenge. It's really hard to hear in there, but it's okay. So but actually the last time we played there, we played inside because it was wintertime, and it was actually really good. The sound, we got the sound dialed in pretty well. But the best place is to play out on their deck. They have this big giant deck right there when you walk into or when you pull into the pour farm. And the forecast was supposed to be good, but a little bit iffy with some chances of some rain showers. But the day was nice, and so we went ahead and set up outside, and we played for maybe 15 minutes or so. We played about two songs roughly, and it just started raining like crazy. And luckily, I brought a tarp, and right before it started raining, it got really windy, and like all my papers for the band, my little cheat sheets and the notes that I have with my music, all of that shit went flying across the deck. So I had to like grab all that stuff. And then 2 minutes later, it started raining pretty hard. And luckily, I had this big giant tarp in my car, and I grabbed that and covered everything up. And then we couldn't play, so we stopped playing for about 15, 20 minutes. And then it got clear again, and then we started playing again, and then it rained. It started raining again, and then after it stopped raining, we ended up playing again, and then it got really humid out. It got like tropical. It turned into this like tropical climate, and at that point, I got attacked by thousands of mosquitoes after that. So it was a little bit chaotic, but we ended up playing about 2 hours. We because of the stopping because of the rain and stuff. We ended up playing a little bit later, but the show itself went really, I thought, was a blast, and I had some friends show up. It was kind of a mellow night anyway. I think we were kind of the first band of the season there to play outside, but it was still fun, and had some friends show up, and we got to play some new material that we haven't really played out before, and I really love that, and that was a blast. So yeah, I always love that place. I'm hoping to be able to go back there and play some more shows. So yeah, thanks to the folks coming out and supporting our strange little band, where we play music that is not stuff that is not for everyone, but it's also music that you're not going to really hear at like your conventional venues around here. So it was a super fun time. So yeah, great times. And the thing that I love about that the most is getting a chance to play some new material. I'm always trying to keep the band fresh, trying to always move things forward, trying to always challenge ourselves, and trying to always challenge myself as a musician. And to be able to have a place where we can, you know, basically test run some material, brand new material, is really awesome for me. I learned so much by that experience, and it's a lot of work. It's a crazy amount of work getting to that place, but it's also so worth it. And it's the ultimate testing ground to see if material is going to work in a real situation, outside of the rehearsal space. And so it's super fun. We have a lot of material with this band. We have a lot of, I've written a lot of new tunes this year and late last year. So it's always fun trying to mix things up and trying to interject some new things. So yeah, great times doing that, doing those kinds of things. So this movie is such a wonderful experience. I bought this movie quite a few years ago, and that is 2014's Sleepwalker. I bought this actually at. I've talked about it a little bit in other previous shows from last year, of a place that I used to go to for video rentals, or I should say DVD rentals, Blu-ray rentals, and that was Harbor Audio Video in Camden, Maine. HAV. They've been actually out of business now for a few years, but it was a super cool place. I had two memberships to two rental places where I would rent movies. I still have mine at Opera House Video in Belfast. I'll be going there today later on to get some new movies, but that place is still going. I don't know how they're doing it, but they are. I think they have a really super loyal clientele, and they've been around for years, like over 20 years, and it's kind of a local institution. They seem like they're doing okay. They're surviving this whole kind of crazy time that we're living in. But I got a membership, and this is a few years back now, about probably 5 years ago. I used to, I used to do a lot of work, some gigs, and then some recording projects. I was doing a lot of work in Thomaston, Maine. I was doing a lot of work with my great friend Mike Whitehead, who plays bass in Quantum. He has a recording studio, and we were busy doing some recording projects at the time. So I was down that way quite a bit, and then also there used to be this really awesome venue down in Thomaston called the Highlands Cafe, which was an awesome venue, and that place actually closed also, unfortunately, many years ago. And that was a really great coffee house music venue that used to have music all the time. And that place was actually one of the first, probably the first venue that we played at as Quantum. That place was such a great space because, and the owners were so nice and so awesome because they took so many chances with music events there, and there was a handful of groups that around the time when we started Quantum that had just started, and they were original based projects. Some friends that I know, and they all had their first gig at that venue. And that's kind of where that was the venue that gave a lot of local original acts their first gig. And so always will be indebted to those folks for what they did for us as a band. And and I feel like everybody else who was involved with that place feels the same way. So during that time, and a lot of those gigs and recordings were usually on Sundays. So I was down in that area a lot, and I would drive through Camden, and typically I got in a habit. Had gotten a membership to HAV, Harbor Auto Video, and I got in a routine of being down there a lot on Sundays. And on my way home, I would usually stop there and rent movies to watch at night. And that place was great. They had an amazing foreign film selection, pretty good DVDs, or really good DVD selection, pretty good horror selection. They had an amazing. The two things that they had that was the best was they had an amazing foreign film selection and documentary selection. They had like just an outstanding amount of those kinds of genres. They had a pretty decent Blu-ray selection, but at the time I didn't have a Blu-ray player, so I was just watching DVDs. But unfortunately, fast forward a couple of years, they closed because of all the bullshit in the world. So they were having a blowout sale, and I went there and bought a ton of movies. And this was one of the movies I bought, and I had rented this there before, and I was blown away by this movie. It is a totally like hypnotic experience. It's a super dark. It's a very dark movie. It's a real evocative movie, and it's essentially it was directed by Mona Fastvold, and it's a really mysterious movie. It's kind of ambiguous, but it's centered on this family, this couple that's living in this house, and they basically the wife, the girl, she inherits this house from her father. And the house is this gorgeous house. It's this beautiful house set in the woods. Her father passes away, and so she gets this house, you know, in his name from him, in his will. But the house needs all of this work. It's like part of most of the structure is actually falling apart. So they move into this house and they're trying to basically live in it and fix it as they go. And she has the main character has this really complicated, really messed up relationship with her family. You start finding out that they had this really kind of weird, there's this crazy weird dynamic, really dysfunctional kind of dynamic in the family, particularly her and her sister. There's all this weird tension, and so her sister reaches out to her, and her sister is having lots of emotional problems, and her sister basically ends up moving into the house, and she ends up bringing her boyfriend, and he does not get along with her husband at all. There's all this weird tension, and there's all this weird sexual tension between all of these characters. And then you're getting these little bits of information as to why this family is pretty fucked up, and why there's why things are the way they are. But it's really subtle, and it's essentially a melodrama, and it's centered on these four characters, and it's really ambiguous. There's not like you're a lot of the narrative of the story, especially the ending. You're kind of left to a little bit of making up your own mind, but it's amazing. There are certain sequences in the film where it's so beautifully shot and it's so haunting that it feels like a horror film. It's an incredibly low budget film. The director, Mona Fastvold, is a Norwegian director, and so it feels, even though this is an American film, it feels like you're watching a foreign film. It's got an incredible amount of that kind of European sensibility, where the pace is really, really slow. It's very atmospheric. It's very character based. The music is incredible. Such an amazing movie, and such an original movie. And it's kind of it's got this very dreamlike quality to it. And it actually does, like I said, I think it does have elements of horror in it because of the aesthetic, and there's all of this tension, and you're not really sure where things are going to go between between these relationships with these four characters. And at time there's a moment in the film where it gets incredibly explosive and pretty violent, and it builds to this climax. But it's an amazing movie, and when Horror Out of Video closed and they were announcing that they were closing, they were having this massive blowout sale, and this was one of the movies that they had. So I jumped at the chance to buy this, and this is a movie I never hear ever talked about. It's truly a remarkable movie. It's super low budget, but it's so beautifully shot. It feels like you're watching a really great like foreign film, and I attribute that to, again, the pacing. A lot of European films have a very slow pace. They're kind of slow burns, and this film really has that. It requires a little bit of patience. It's never, I don't think it ever drags. It's never too slow. It's really the cinematography for this movie is pretty breathtaking. The music is really haunting. And again, it's one of those movies where it's very mysterious, and you're never there's never a point in the story of where you're being told how to feel. It's a very evocative movie, and it's really about a character study on more or less like dysfunctional relationships. It's pretty dark, definitely pretty dark, but the actors are just tremendous. The cast is tremendous in this movie. And some of these actors I definitely knew and have seen them in other films since then. Stephanie Ellis, Brady Corbett, Christopher Abbott, and Jit Witt. Christopher Abbott, I've seen in a few movies. I've seen him in a couple of horror movies. He's a really great actor. He's got a lot of charisma on the screen. Really great. Really, really great. Mona Fastvold, this is the only movie of hers that I have, and the only movie of hers that I have seen. She's a Norwegian filmmaker and also an actress. She she's known for directing drama films, The Sleepwalker and The World to Come. She's also directed music videos for a bunch of different bands. Um, yeah, The World to Come, which came out in 2020, which would be I would check out any of her movies because The Sleepwalker is just such a great movie. And The Sleepwalker, again, it came out quite a few years ago, 2014. It's crazy. So I will have to check out her other films. The Brutalist, which came out in 2017, I think. The Childhood of a Leader in 2015. The Other Woman, 2009. The Mustang in 2019. So she's been involved, starred in, and also directed quite a few films. But this is a outstanding movie that I never hear talked about ever. If you're a fan of foreign films, this is definitely one of those. It's not like again, it's an American movie, but it has it's steeped in like European sensibilities. But again, it has it's a hard movie to define because it's kind of it's a very mysterious movie. It's a drama. There's a lot of suspense, and it actually has elements of horror because of how the story is told. So it has, I think this movie has a real broad, or could have a real broad appeal for people who are into suspense films, European movies, and then also horror films. Uh, yeah, just an amazing film. Sleepwalker, 2014. Definitely check this out. This edition that I have is actually a beautiful edition. I only have it on DVD. I don't have this on Blu-ray, but this would be a beautiful movie to get on Blu-ray. But this edition is pretty stellar. It's got a really great little special features thing on here too, where it's got interviews with all of the actors and the cast, and it goes into pretty good detail about this film and about the they. I remember they especially talk about the how low budget this film was and what how limited they were as far as financing. But man, it really shines. Every scene uh, for this film is like a piece of art. So I highly, highly recommend this movie, Sleepwalkers, 2014. Wonderful movie. Thanks again. This is Jason Dean, and we will see you next time. Peace.